Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. This podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, and the small acts that made a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms to training rooms, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. This week, our guest is Ian Watts, and I am very excited to have Ian on. Always have a pre-call with the guests, and Ian has some takes I think that are very important and very powerful. And we spend a lot of time talking about training and talking about what today's employees want and need versus what yesterday's employees wanted and needed. And I think you're going to find it really interesting. So with that, I'm going to say hello, Ian. Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Hello, Brian. Allow me to say that I too thoroughly enjoyed our briefing call, and I'm so excited about our conversation. To open up, I can share that I am first a follower of Christ. I'm also a husband of almost 22 years. My wife and I have been honeymooning for quite some time. I know at some point she's going to see this and she won't be happy that I admit that she can't keep her hands off of me. No, I'm just joking. But what I will say is that I married up. I got much better than what I deserve. My wife is amazing. We have 3 kids. From a business perspective, I'm the founder of Employee Success Company, where we improve employee engagement, performance, and retention. So it's our goal to turn disengaged employees into high performers who stay with our clients. And we do that with a proprietary process called the ACT method. So again, thank you for having me.
Of course, we're thrilled to have you here. And you're speaking my language. Employee engagement is the $1 billion question. And it has been for as long as I can remember. And, it's interesting because each generation says of the one that follows it, oh, they're entitled or they want so much. And I think the truth of the matter is we're human beings. We're evolving. And I think it is, you and I spoke about this a bit today, and we're going to get into this, how today's employees are looking for and want different things.
They do. I'm really concerned about the word entitled. I would caution the use against it because I believe it's dismissive and I think it's short sighted. What I would share is that employees, younger employees, are exposed. They are exposed to the fact that I don't necessarily have to work 10, 12, 15 hours per day and have no life balance or invest the lion's share of my time and not be happy and not be fulfilled with what I'm doing. So when you're exposed as business people, we understand supply and demand. The reality is this: when we have been exposed, when we become aware that there is a different type of employment that we have an opportunity to take advantage of, one that cares about me more than just as a human doing, as actually a human being, one that not only has good salary and benefits, but that has strong leadership that cares about me differently. Who wouldn't want that? If I want to raise my hand for that. I want to raise my hand for not being seen as just a cog in a wheel. I want to raise my hand for being at a place that I'm allowed to do something that makes my heart pant. So I think rather than entitled, I would prefer to use the word exposed.
I think that's very interesting. And to be clear, I don't think I'm a father of 3 sons. I don't think they're entitled, nor do I think they are looking for something for nothing. I think different times call for different tools. And I think, um, and I think a lot of this, you can go back, you can look at COVID. We've learned the power of technology and that there are things we can access from the comfort of our own home. So the hybrid model of some time in the office, some time remote. I mean, I think there's lots of solutions, and I think that does a couple things for us. Um, I think it invites more people into the workplace on a sustaining basis. You take a look at the cost of daycare in
Yes.
this country and how that chases people out. So I'm with you, and I spent a good part of the afternoon, to our audience, going through Ian's Facebook page and other things I could find and read about him, and he's got some really really powerful perspectives about all of that. It used to be the model was you find a big company or you find a company, didn't have to be big, and you're going to spend the next 25 to 30 years there. And I remember when people would leave the company I worked for, they would be coded as disloyal or disenfranchised. And when in fact, it's a perfectly rational decision to you join a company, you ride the river with that company
Absolutely.
for as long as it makes sense for both of you.
I love to hear you share that. Long gone are the days of 25 and 30 and out, right? I love to come back to that. For years, we have wrestled with what was most important, right? If we're going to succeed, and for years we thought it was IQ, right? How sharp are you? And that's important. But then we moved into EQ, right? How emotionally intelligent are you? How well do you self-regulate and just in, how well do you self-regulate and interpersonally? How do you relate with others? What does that look like? But now, and not that we would disregard the first two, AQ is becoming much more prevalent. Adaptability quotient. So it's
Mm.
not intelligence, just intelligence quotient or emotional intelligence quotient. It's how adaptable are you? You stated it so clearly. We are in evolving times and we have to be able to adapt to it. And the reality is, long gone are those days of 30 and out. So knowing that, rather than lamenting that it's a reality, we shouldn't live our lives viewing the world through rose-colored glasses, right? One of the things we have to do as leaders is we have to define reality. Where are you, right? That's not to say that vision isn't important, but when you go to the mall and before cell phones, before we had these wonderful things that would take us directly to stores, when you are going to a place and maybe you went in a door that you're not used to, or it's a new mall altogether, when you're trying to find your place, the first thing you do is look at the map and you see where the store is. But then you have to find that you are here dot. Then you can plot out a path to get there. A lot of people are lamenting the fact that we are here. We just have to accept where we are. And as it pertains to people transitioning, rather than lamenting that it happens, how about we reframe how we see this and we use the time that we have to add as much value to the lives of our people as we can. And not only do we send them off, but we send them off with our blessing and sometimes even encouragement because it's important, because it's in their best interest. And if we've done a great job as leaders and we've developed our people, then we have someone who, for lack of better terms, that can fill that vacuum.
I think that's so powerful. And this idea that we need to train and teach our people, I think, is very important. I had a guest about a month ago, Kelly McGinnis, and Kelly's an executive for a number of different companies. And Kelly writes a lot about the personal responsibility to learn. So the company has an obligation to teach, the employee has an obligation to learn because they're responsible for ultimately their careers and where they go. And I think it's so powerful. And I think the two things work together actually beautifully.
I do as well. It should be a mutually beneficial exchange. When I think about leadership, the first level of leadership is self leadership, right? I love the phrase, it's an Irish phrase, that life is better felt than telt, right? So, one of the very first things we're doing is modeling the type of behavior that we want to see demonstrated. But if we don't self regulate enough to not just embrace what the company is offering, but we do indeed have to take our careers into our own hands. And we should be continuous learners. As long as you're green, you're growing. But when you ripen, you start to rot. So it
That's
should be
right.
this continuous process, and there should be this mutual exchange of value, right? In times past, there was a mindset that, oh my God, if I could just get in with this company, I would be so blessed. And that very well may be true. But I think employees are beginning to realize that, wait a minute, no, I'm valuable. And now, because again, you heard me mention earlier regarding supply and demand, I have options. So it's a mutual exchange that both the employer and the employee should embrace.
You started this talk today with saying that your faith and your beautiful wife and your family, I mean, there are things that are more important
Hmm.
than your work, and they need to be. And I think as employers, we need to recognize that and find it's not that your job isn't important. It's very important to be able to pay your bills and to help self actualize as you grow it. It makes us vibrant, contributing members of the community. And that's really
Yeah,
important. It's
it's
important to model for
really
our
true.
kids. It's important to model for our spouses and our spouses to us. But there's got to be room for all of that. And I think one of the things, some of the, I feel so old saying this, but as some of these younger folks come in, I think they're coming into it much clearer, certainly than I was.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I know what it's like to realize that money is not the end all and be all. And if you will permit, I will share my story to make that point. So I was born and raised on the east side of Detroit. And in many ways, my story is somewhat familiar to a lot of minority boys and girls, African Americans in particular, some, not all, that grew up in urban areas, in that my father was in prison when I was younger. And my mother, my brother, who's 4 years my senior, and I lived on welfare. As a matter of fact, we lived on less than $580 per month. So, right, as you can imagine, I wanted to get as far and as fast away from that reality as possible, and I saw entrepreneurship as a way out. And I wanted to become a successful entrepreneur. And not only that, I wanted to become a millionaire. But it wasn't even good enough to become a millionaire. I wanted to get there by the age of 30, because at the time I naively thought that money, to the point that we mentioned earlier, was the answer to all things. Well, I actually achieved my goal almost 4 years ahead of what I was shooting for, but the bottom fell completely and miserably out of my first business. And before the bottom fell out, though, what became really apparent to me is that the stuff that I thought that would help to overcome the pain of poverty, that would fill the void that was in my heart, the money, the stuff, the things, the trips. Some people try it with sex, some people try it with position or influence. There's a lot of things that we try to fill in that void, and money, what so many people realize, or just working to get to the top, right? So many people, it's so cliche, but it's true. You end up climbing a ladder and you realize it was against the wrong wall. But it was through that experience, though, that I discovered my why. I was glad. Eventually, I got glad when I was going through it. It sucked. But when the bottom fell out, it helped crystallize two things for me. One is that I wanted to be what I didn't see, because all along the way, during the first foray into my entrepreneurial journey, I was looking for mentorship that I never got. And that created a burning desire to be what I didn't see. But it also crystallized what my personal mission is, which is to build businesses to bless the world. I recognize that for me, not for all, but for me, in many ways, business is somewhat like a ministry, in that those who I'm building the business with, not just the customers, clients, or patients that the business will serve, but those who I'm leading, I have such an opportunity to impact their lives at the highest level. So it was through that lens that I discovered, it was through that experience, and that experience shaping the lens through which I view the world, that not that business is bad, and not that profitability is bad, not that wealth, there's a problem with it, but you realize that you can get to a point and you realize it's hollow, it can feel meaningless. And so many of our people thankfully didn't have to have the experience that I did and so many others, where you have to go through and have your knees cut from under you before you realize working is working my fingers to the bone or working until I retire, that I delay or defer, 40 years of my life to then begin to find some level of enjoyment. That's really not the ticket. I'll share this and then I'll pause because I've shared a little bit more than what I intended. But I practiced willful ignorance. I had tunnel vision. I literally was obsessed. And I know a lot of people, especially a lot of the motivational gurus, will tout that you have to be obsessed. I would argue a bit differently. You need to be extremely passionate and diligent. Obsession can be something different altogether. And I didn't wake up and realize that water was wet or that colors were beautiful until I was in my mid 30s. That's not a way to go about your life, whether at being an entrepreneur or working for a company.
I want to share with you a similar story, and I hope there's a point in here, but I feel
Please,
compelled to
please.
tell you. So my dad moved us from New York to Minneapolis when I was 14, and then he split. And my mom hadn't worked in 20 years, and so she was raising five of us. I was the oldest, so
Mm,
I went to work at 14, and um, from that moment, all I wanted, um, and we had a violent home and
mm,
alcoholic home, and this is not a woe is me. I'm just telling you, all I wanted was a family. I wanted to find the right woman, and I wanted to make this beautiful family, and I wanted to dedicate myself to it. And I found the right woman, and we started our family. And then my career started to climb, and I was rolling, and the focus, the tunnel started to get there. Just
mm,
what you're talking about. I feel you on that.
mm,
And then my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer.
mm.
And do you know what? It was a 15-year battle. It was a tough battle. We lost her in 2016, but there was a gift in that it expanded. Every minute is precious, every day is precious. And um, you just can't commit yourself to that tunnel because then you become small. And it is my passionate, and I'll tell you this straight up, I would have given everything I had for another month with Susie,
Wow.
for another week with Susie. And it doesn't matter what you have. And I always tell people the little things late in the game when Sue and I would talk about things, and I'm sorry to go down this rabbit hole with you,
Oh,
but
I appreciate it. Thank you.
and when you have those talks towards the end, you don't think about the big things like how, oh baby, how are we going to make this mortgage? Is it too much house? Or what about this? Or what about that? What about this BS rival at work that's causing problems for me? You start talking about the little things, and you realize the little things are actually the big things. And I
Oh,
know it's such a cliche, but I'm telling you, it's true. And I know it's true because,
wow.
but
So thank you so much for
sure,
sharing. And my obviously I know it's been a decade, but
yeah,
my condolences to you regarding your wife. Um, my daughter laughs at me because I get so mesmerized just looking at the different colored blossoms as we ride.
yeah,
It's just the small things. It really is the small things, to your point, that make
yeah.
such a big difference. And as it pertains to leadership, it instantly, when you said that, it made me, it called something to my remembrance, that so many companies rely upon the big events,
Mm.
the annual meetings where you bring in the superstar speakers. And I'm a speaker, so I appreciate bringing in speakers, but it's the small things. It is letting people know that I see you,
Mhm.
I hear you. It makes such a big difference. And it can't just be what some people do some of the time. It has to be a reflection of who you are. And when you do that, it's those small things that make a big difference. When you realize that it's not the perks and the pizza parties. It's reframing how you see your people and how you engage with them as a person. It makes a difference.
And here's the sounds simple, but you have to be real. You have to actually care
You do.
because people sniff out the the fake. People sniff out the inauthentic leaders. And if you actually tell people you care, you have to care and you have to
Have to
walk it.
care. And the reality is they are paying much more attention to what they see you do versus what you say. If it's incongruent, here's what people are asking. Can I trust you?
Yeah,
Right? Because of how we're wired from a neurobiological perspective, I really nerd out on psychology and neuroscience. We are always trying to find danger signs. And if you are not psychologically safe to your people, you have done yourself a great disservice, right? Do you actually care? Well, if you say you care and you did this thing that demonstrates to me that no, you don't care, now I can't trust you. Now I'm disengaging. Now I don't like when we have the privilege of leading people, they have entrusted to us their life and their livelihood and that of their families. But when
that's
we
right.
demonstrate to them that they're not worthy of that trust, how secure will our people be?
That's right.
It doesn't work.
And think about relationships in your life. When trust is lost, it is the hardest thing there is to regain it. The
Yes.
hardest thing there it is to regain it. In one of your videos today, I was mesmerized when you were talking about how we identify top performers, we identify strong performers, and we promote them almost as a reward.
We do.
And then when we don't train them, we all pay for it. Everyone pays for it. And the way you delivered that line, I just like, man, I got it.
Their reward being promoted becomes a punishment to everyone if we don't properly train our people. I was really shocked to find out that upwards of 2/3 of people who have been high performers and who are promoted into positions of leadership or management haven't been trained. And we wonder why our people disengage. We wonder why performance drops. And we wonder why some of our best people are leaving. It's like you've been promoted because you were a great individual performer. Being a leader is a completely different skill set. So promotion becomes a punishment.
So, how do we teach these leaders to be authentic and engaged? Isn't that kind of the $1 billion question? That's the second $1 billion question, but it's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. I think that so many HR leaders, I believe, are skittish because they tried programs that didn't stick and because we haven't necessarily cracked that code. But you would think that we would spend a little bit more time doing it because the reality is this according to Gallup, engagement equals EBITDA. So as they do their annual engagement survey, where they do the top 12 questions, the companies that are most engaged are 21% more profitable. So to answer your question directly, I first think that we need to share what the data reflects. So engagement equals EBITDA. That's a great starting point. And then I think we need to see models that have been refreshed or new altogether so that people actually see how to do it. Because here's what I'm sensitive to. Sometimes people are promoted and they still have to be both an individual performer
Mhm.
and they're leading people. So one more thing, and it feels like people are just swimming. So the other thing that I think that's important, after we prove that the outcomes are worth it, we have to help our people prioritize what's most important. I just had a conversation with the leader. They were saying, how do I do what you're saying in the midst of everything that I have going on? Well, the reality is the work doesn't stop. But as a leader, one of our responsibilities is to determine what's most important. And we need to be very clear about which fires we just need to let burn. Leading and developing our people cannot be one of those fires that we just let burn. It has to be a priority.
Yeah. You mentioned Gallup and engagement equaling EBITDA. We did a lot. I've done a lot of work with Gallup, and
Really?
oh yeah, and we did strengths finders, and we did the annual engagement survey,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get great numbers by a budget flaw. You can have great numbers because a competitor goes out. You can have great numbers for a number of reasons. What you can't fake is engagement and employee engagement. And I found that those numbers lined up very, very well.
That is so amazing. Well, if you'll permit, I will share a proprietary method that we have developed to drastically enhance engagement. And for the last 2 years, I've just been evangelizing the methodology. And what I realized is that many employers need a done for you service, which is why we decided to launch that this year. I've created what's called the ACTS method. And the method is designed to drastically enhance employee engagement, which leads to better performance and much greater retention. And the A in the ACTS method stands for aspirations. So if your people are interested in Ian, what can I do practically? This sounds really great, but I want to make sure this is not just HR fluff. Actionably, what can I do? Well, the A in the ACTS method stands for aspirations, helping your people achieve their greatest goals and dreams. What is it that keeps your people up at night staring at the ceiling? This assumes you actually know your people's goals and dreams. So here's a leadership test. Do you know if time and money weren't a circumstance and your person didn't have to work for you, what is it that makes their heart pant beyond what they're doing? Because most people are not actually working in the role that they set out to.
Right.
So the first thing you can do is take your people out to lunch individually, one by one, and say, I believe that I may have failed you as a leader. I'm still growing, but I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to just sit and you tell me what your dreams are, your goals and dreams. If you will permit me, if you will allow me, I'd love to be able to encourage and support you to that end, right? So treat your people out to lunch. And if you don't have the budget for that, right? And let's just say it's too difficult at present for you to steal the time away for you to do that. Set a meeting in the office, do the same thing. And if you can't buy them a book to help support based upon what they told you, spend 3 or 4 hours over a quarter watching YouTube videos so that you can say, based upon what you've shared with me, I think these videos will help move you further faster. So the A stands for aspirations. But as I mentioned earlier, I know what it's like, and really high achievers know what it's like to invest your time, invest your energy, to throw your whole self at something and actually achieve what you wanted to achieve, assuming that it was going to give you this sustaining sense of joy, only to find out that it was fleeting. So the C in the ACTS method stands for helping your people to discover and demonstrate what they've been uniquely called or created to do. Because that's what gives people a deep sense of fulfillment, that longing and yearning in their heart. And the psychology backs us up. The T stands for transformation. How can I help to develop you, to train you, to get you coaching, not just for your current role or even roles that you may aspire to, not just to help you personally, professionally, but also help you personally. You want people to reframe this job as not only a place where, excuse me, they have good salary and benefits. That's the bare minimum bar. But you don't have to have it at the highest end of salary and benefits if you're doing or implementing the ACTS method. Not only do I have a good salary and benefits, but they're helping me achieve my personal goals and dreams. They're working with me and giving me exercises and bringing in people to help me discover what I'm uniquely called to do. But not only that, when I come to this place, I'm a much better husband. When I leave and go home, I'm a much better father. I'm a much better wife. I how I engage with my kids are different. So my training is not just for the current job or even jobs that I aspire to. It's making me better at home. So the first 3 letters in the ACTS method are really employee centric. The S in the ACTS method is similar to employee assistance programs, but with the twist. How can I put together a system and how do I budget where structurally I know when and how to support my people during the most critical moments? So when your people buy a new house, are we sending them a basket with a gift card in it saying welcome home? When the kids go off to college, are we sending them something saying, hey, your mom and your dad are amazing. We just want to encourage you in your collegiate or your academic journey. Or when the bottom falls out, God forbid, during the loss of a spouse, when there's sickness, when something happens that completely feels like it guts you, do we have something in place to support people during the most critical moments? So all of this is designed, and then I'll stop, is to create a deep sense of reciprocity,
Mhm.
right? So if we want to know, how do I create engagement? You're creating a deep sense of reciprocity when you have been so instrumental, you've been so transformative in someone's life, they can't help but overflow. Like them staying is a bare minimum bar. They want to give you everything they can because here's what we know. You can buy a hand, but you have to win a heart. And when you win that heart, engagement goes through the roof. Performance, all of the discretionary effort. And then your people are going to stay with you longer, even when it's probably in their best interest for them to leave, they still stay with you longer. And while they're there, they give you everything they got. So that's what people can do to drastically enhance engagement.
I that is so powerful. And if you, it really is. And it's such a natural extension and amplification. I remember Gallup early on um, really focused in on people leave leaders when they feel like somebody doesn't care about them at work. We
Yeah.
all want someone to care about us at work. I could and will talk to you about this for hours,
I
and
look forward to it.
I'm really hoping, because our time is just flown by. I really want, uh, and I'll reach out to you. I'd like to set up a couple of more sessions with you, a couple of more episodes, because
Absolutely.
I'd like to explore the employee end of this and all the messaging and things employees are barraged with. And I'd like to talk about AI and your
Hmm.
thoughts about what all that's going to mean. Um, if people want to reach out and find you, Ian,
Sure.
where should they do that?
Sure. Two places. Everyone can go to employeesuccesscompany.com. That's employeesuccesscompany.com. Or they can reach me on social, on LinkedIn, Ian M. Watts. Ian M. Watts. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well, Ian M. Watts.
Ian, if you send me a link to these things, we will tag them on this episode and every place we promote this episode with you. I'd be very happy to do that. I think you have a powerful voice, and I really, really appreciate you and the work you're doing. And I look forward to you and I spending more time talking and thinking through that.
Well, again, allow me to say it is first time, to the point that you made earlier, has just flown by. I had no idea it would move so quickly, but you and I have already established I'm going to fly out. We're going to break bread. We're going to spend time together. I love to hear many of your stories, and I love to learn so much more about your journey. But I will most certainly provide everything, and I'm looking forward to continuing the dialogue.
Good. And I want to hear more about your story. So that's it for this episode of the most important podcast ever. A huge thank you to Ian M. Watts. I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate the forthright nature with which you share your story. But an even bigger thanks to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this conversation, and how could you not, please share it with someone who will find it meaningful. You can watch and listen on our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on all the socials. And wherever you get your podcast, you can find our episodes. And please subscribe. It helps us out and it's free. And finally, I want to thank the crew here at Streetside Studio 7 and our hosts at Deja Blue House of Coffee in beautiful Alexandria, Minnesota. Best cup of coffee you're going to find here. And that's it. We'll see you next week.